pushes it back.
Seems so much like her. I'm glad to see that she's staying true to her.
Just pushing it back a little. Because we don't have another one.
Well, she called me when she didn't come. She actually said, "Yeah, I'll go over some family stuff and just give you your info."
But they can go Tuesday.
As long as they endorse it.
I don't know, we just had some that were not gonna be here, that we're out of town. So I don't know whether,
Ready? Welcome to our City Council meeting tonight, June 26, 2013. I've asked Councilman Jeff Turk if he'll give us our invocation and Councilman Ron Truman if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
our dear, kind, gracious Father in heaven, as we humbly bow our heads and come before thee at the beginning of this city council meeting, we do so with gratitude and thanksgiving in our hearts, Father, for the many blessings thou blesses us with. We're especially grateful for this great land that we live in, where freedoms and opportunities and blessings are poured upon us. We're grateful for this great city in which we inhabit, and for those great residents that we are able to rub shoulders with and call neighbors and friends, and for the blessings that thou pours upon each of us in this community. Father, we're grateful for those great men and women who serve to protect our freedoms and our rights and our opportunities throughout the world and here in our community. And we pray for them and for their families at this time, that they'll be watched over, protected, and blessed for their efforts. We pray now that as we discuss and take care of the city's business, that we would be guided and directed in the ways that would be most beneficial and blessing the lives of our community and our citizens and residents here. We ask for guidance and direction in our matters. We ask for those that stand in need of special blessings in their lives and our community, that they would be blessed at this time. And we do this in the name of our Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Everybody please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that. We'll move on to item 1, approval of the agenda.
Mayor, if there's no changes, I will make the motion that we approve the agenda as listed.
Okay, there's a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second.
Councilman Turk, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you. Announcements? Do we have any announcements? Maybe I can just remind everybody that this week and next week are going to be really hot. So watch your watering, watch your fires, and just take care of yourselves and your families. And if you have older parents, check in on them, make sure they're okay. We just want to make sure everybody's safe and out of harm's way during the heat.
You don't want to announce anything with your 4th of July celebration?
Oh yeah, we won't be.
Yeah, it's coming
And
up
a
next
reminder: the Lions Club is is having their annual 4th of July celebration. The mayor and his family, or his brothers and his dad, we've been cooking breakfast for about 30. Well, Dad's been doing it for 60 years, but we're going to have breakfast there, and then we'll have lunch and then games and activities. We invite everybody out to come. Maybe we'll even have some water there to cool you off.
Boil it first.
Yeah, we'll boil it first. Okay, item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare, gentlemen? Okay, item 4, our consent agenda. To approve the minutes of the city council meetings of 6/11/13 and 6/12/13.
If there's no discussion, Mayor, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the minutes of 6/11/13 and 6/12/13.
Have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion is second.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turk, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 5, subdivision amendments and extensions. Consideration to approve a subdivision amendments and extension for the North Bridge subdivision phase 2 and 3. My understanding, we'd like to take those separately. So we'll take phase 2 first, and then we'll go with phase 3.
Thank you,
you, Mayor, and I just zoomed in because the particular pieces we're talking about are these, and so I kind of blew those up, that lot 69 through 72. Now, the applicant is requesting approval of an amendment and extension of the final plat for Phase 2 of Northbridge as stated. The applicant's wishing to amend and extend the plat in order to incorporate land adjoining to the northeast boundary line into their subdivision. The land is currently owned by Washington City, and the property owners have inquired of the city to purchase the land and have it joined to their respective parcels. The city council kind of agreed to this a couple months back. Now we're just going through the processes of doing so. The particular pieces only in question, again, are 69 through 72 and the common area there in the slashed portion. Staff has reviewed the request for this amendment and extension, has no problem. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at their June 19th meeting, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amendment and extension of the final plat for Northbridge Phase 2, and this is the second one. If you're wondering where the first one came, that lot number 73 is there's a church sitting there now, and it used to be a cul-de-sac, and we took that out of the proposed Phase 3 at that time and brought it into Phase 2, and that's why this is called the second amendment and extension for that. So with that, again, the Planning Commission recommended that approval to the City Council based on the findings and subject to the conditions as outlined in your report. And just for your reference, this dotted line right there at the end of the tip of my pen is where the current, I guess, boundary line is today. So it's all that area on that, beyond that point. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have on this particular item.
Just looking at the map on lot 72, there's the extension of the property where it's the common area.
Yeah.
Does that church go all the way back, or does that make a good transition, or is it a hard line? Do you see where the dot is there, and then the dashed line comes up on the high corner of lot 72?
You mean that thinner area that goes up? Well, just to explain there, all the other property owners wanted to extend their backyards. Lot 72 didn't, but they wanted to keep it fairly uniform.
Right.
And so they went to the homeowners association. They're going to pick that up and landscape it. So that's why it was tied with that existing hash area. They'll just treat it like there will be a trail through there and landscaping to get to the park.
But then that transitions into the park or into the church area.
Isn't the church on 73?
The church is on 73, right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this will still be all of our land out here, still
Okay.
beyond that line. And basically where my pin is, you're into that detention basin. It's filled with the rocks,
Oh,
etc.
that's
So
the park there.
yeah. Yeah, but basically we have landscaping or crushed rock, and that's where it kind of ends, and then there's this gap between our property and our landscaping of our park and the back of their properties, and that's why they thought, well, if it's going to remain like this, that's where the conversation all started, was if the city would like to just go, so they don't have to worry about maintaining that weed patch, because that's what it is right now.
And the end of lot 72, that's going to be a good transition point. We're not going to have more lots come wanting the same thing. I mean, that's a good place.
Yeah, there won't be any, because it's our land and it's where our detention basin is, etc. So.
Okay.
So on lot 7, so was that already an access? Was that already?
That was
common area?
already an access to the park, yeah, as part of their
Okay.
subdivision.
Okay.
That hashed area was always designed to be, like I say, a trail and landscaping on it, and
So this will now be owned by the association.
that little
The common
extension part,
area
yeah, just
maintained
the
by the
hashed area,
association.
correct. They will landscape and maintain that hashed area there, and then the rest of the backyards will be, people are actually waiting to build their block walls, et cetera, out to that new property line. There's quite a few new homes along there if you've been up there, and they haven't finished their backyards. They're waiting for this to take place, and then they can do that.
Any questions or comments on that part? All right, we'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd make the motion, but I'd specify that it's just for Phase 2 at this point, even though the agenda includes Phases 2 and 3 on the same line item. So the motion would be that we approve a subdivision amendment and extension for Northridge subdivision Phase 2 only.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second.
Councilman Turk, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to Phase 3.
I'll pretty much keep this brief. It's the same situation. It's just we have two recorded subdivisions, so they're treated as separate entities, so to speak, because that's the way they're treated at the county. Phase 3 is including lots 103 down to 100. Same scenario. People asked, well, why the funny little bubble out there at the end of 101? Well, they just followed where our landscaping is right now and where just the raw dirt starts. So we just went to that point, and so now we'll just have their subdivision right backed up against our landscaping in this case. So again, the Planning Commission reviewed it, recommended approval unanimously for the Phase 3 extension.
I know it's not something we can change tonight, but how do we get a lot 103 next to a lot 72?
That's a good question, and partly of that was because when we took out these lots in this 70 that 73 became, we lost quite a few numbers. And the way it was numbered around, it actually came, and it's kind of unique, but if you look at the whole master plan of the preliminary plat, that's basically the reason is when we took out all those lots in the cul-de-sac where the church is now, took out a lot of lots.
There was basically 30 lots in there.
Yeah, and it just kind of ended up, they started there and then they brought Phase 3 around and numbered them that way. That's kind of how they'll do it. They just, instead of, some way it's always going to end up being weird when you're doing a subdivision with the numbering. So the old 72 went over and then 73, but then we lost, so they started going east.
It didn't make sense at any of these change points to adjust numbering then?
No, that was all taken care of. These are all recorded subdivisions already, so we're good. And really a number is more like an identifier, not so worried about calculating. People just know that their lot, they can look on a plat, narrow it down and say there's 102 or whatever my lot number may be, so.
But don't these also result in addresses as well?
The lots really don't. The address becomes attached to that at a later date during a building permit. So down at the county, you know, I mean, when you own a lot, yeah, your parcel number, like if you zone in on that.
Description is lot 72 of.
Right.
the
It does.
second
It could be
amendment.
anywhere within the subdivision. You just find it on that particular
Okay.
plat. So it does look odd, but it just because they started counting and going the other direction at that point.
So did they have the lots all resurveyed and were confident in the changes of the boundaries? Or how did they determine the additional square footage for the footprint?
Well, they went out and basically brought it up against our landscape, and then they had a surveyor go out and rewrite the boundaries, the legal descriptions.
Okay.
And then, you know, that'll be verified when these plats are approved, when and if they're, well, the one is approved. When they do, we send them off to our third-party engineer that'll
They'll
then
that.
verify the legal descriptions. Then it goes to the attorney, and he kind of looks it over, make sure, again, everything fits and you know, comes together, or as they call in surveying, everything closes properly.
Yeah, and I think
when
as
you
we
start
talked,
at a point.
as we talked about last night, this is just a preliminary process, and then when it comes down to the actual purchasing of the property, then all is gonna still occur at a later date.
Right, because all those individual properties will have their own addition to it, you know, for their particular
value
records.
attached.
And the value attached on that,
Okay.
which I think you've seen some of the exhibits that have been shown you for review for that later date, so.
Mayor, if there's no further discussion or questions, I will make the motion that we approve the subdivision amendment and extension for the North Bridge subdivision Phase 3.
I have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion and a second.
Truman, aye.
Staley,
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to, the only problem with that is my delivery driver goes from 72 to 103 and goes, where am I? When they drop off product.
I'm already confused.
Item 6, donation. Consideration to give a donation to Southwest Behavioral Science Health Crisis Center, Tammy Fullerton. You don't look like Tammy Fullerton.
She's pretty. Tammy couldn't be here today. She is in Salt Lake attending a training. So my name is Josh Andresen. I'm from the Washington County Youth Crisis Center. I don't know if she gave you the opportunity to kind of read our letterhead and what we're here for. We're here again to ask for funding from not only your city but from the neighboring cities. And what we're asking is the amount you gave last year, which was $5,000. Are there any questions?
I remember the discussion last year, but can you kind of explain again what what the Southwest Behavioral Health and Crisis Center is and kind of what the benefit it has to the community?
The Washington County Youth Crisis Center is actually a kind of a shelter type facility, also a receiving center. So the receiving part is obvious. When law enforcement has nowhere to put the youth due to like their parents not being home, or they just kind of need a break. There's a family dispute in the family. They bring them to us, and it's a 12-hour hold. We're actually located right below the old courthouse where the old detention was. It serves kind of multi-purpose venues. So we also help the Department of Child and Family Services when they pull a child out for abuse or neglect. That child will come to us because their processes, they used to just turn them over to family members, but now they're doing an extensive background check where it could take at least up to a month or so.
If I remember correctly, I know last year there was a request made, and that had to do with the budget cuts from the state, and left a shortfall in revenue, and
It was. It's because when the funding is lean, the first programs that go throughout the state are prevention programs, and that's what we are.
and the state hasn't, with the new budget, added any additional funding?
They did not add us to their budget, their ongoing budget. They will help out. They asked us to kind of come again to the community partners and ask for funding, and then they will kind of allocate the money where it's needed. Part of that reason is because the legislation bill 218, it was passed, and what that is obviously legislation is asking, with the intention of ongoing funding, that community partners step in, local cities, local governments step in, and also through other venues like funding from private donations. So what does happen is we're kind of the first ones to kind of be leaned.
Yeah, so my understanding is with that piece of legislation, this is now permanent. Essentially with the legislation, it's a permanent
That is
cut.
my
You'll be basically required to come back to the city each year.
Right,
for
that is
funding.
my understanding. That is one of the things why Tammy is up in Salt Lake, to kind of figure out where cities get involved, where partnering cities get involved, and the county gets involved, versus how much we will need assistance from, a lot of it is the brain tank of how do we justify to you guys, numbers wise, like how many people are coming out of the Washington City. And I will tell you that Washington City is a close third. The first highest obviously St. George because of bigger zoning. And then the second, which was surprising to us, was Santa Clara, which means Santa Clara just, I guess they're crazier on that side. And then Washington City came close. It was 8%
It's all those
of our
football
population.
losses.
How's the fundraising going so far? Are we among the first?
We haven't crossed that board just because we were expecting to be put back in our base budget, but that didn't happen. So we're crossing new grounds. It's new territory for us. There are some policies that kind of shoot us in the foot where we can't go out and advertise. And so it's kind of a double whammy it's counterproductive.
Well, it's obviously an important service and something that's critical, and I guess I just got a question of our city attorney, Jeff, over there. Is there any issue with the city as far as, we have various organizations come in and ask for donations? Is there any hoops we need to jump through to make certain that we're okay in doing this? And
Well, I also have another question along those same lines. What's the legal status of the Southwest Behavioral Health Center? My understanding, it was actually created by county commissioners. So it's like
I'm not quite sure.
a quasi-governmental.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We're actually not part of Southwest Mental Health. We're with the Juvenile Justice Services. Southwest, we are in partnership with them to house some of their programs. One of the programs is called the Safety Plan.
Is this your website?
No,
So you're not the Southwest?
no,
Behavioral-
we're not. I don't know how we got confused with that.
What's the difference?
Southwest is obviously the mental
Mental
health
health.
aspect of it. We're more the front end prevention, community prevention, and hopefully we do our job good enough that they don't penetrate our system to legally be adjudicated.
So does the agenda read wrong then? it says consideration to give a donation to the Southwest Behavioral Health / Crisis Center. Then it says Tammy Fullerton from
Yeah.
the Washington County Youth Crisis Center.
It's just the Washington County Youth Crisis Center.
Okay.
Councilman,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know historically, Councilman Truman, and I'd have to see if this is still the policy of the state, but it used to be that the one thing that governed donations is that you had to show a value coming back to the community. Now, certainly, you could probably do that here, and what it was intended for when they put that policy in place is so that cities would avoid kind of this discrimination of saying, well, we'll donate to the Kiwanis Club, but we're not going to donate to the Lions Club, and it kind of put it on level footing. And I still think that's at least the policy that most cities do. Again, if that is the case, certainly in this situation, you could probably make that connection. But
Yeah, and let me just answer it, because it's a great question, because this, when you hear it, I mean, I was here last year when this was discussed also, and it's, you know, it's a compelling discussion, but you gotta understand, from a city council member or mayor's position, these requests, they're always compelling, they're always told, I mean, there's just a lot of really good causes, all of which I think get council members' attention every time. So, so the question comes down to, and Council Truman could have asked this, sometimes it's just easy to say, well, this sounds like something different than Kiwanis Club or Boys Club or something else, but in effect, it's not. It's not our organization. We're being asked to donate something. So kind of the two things about donations under state law, under our state code, is this, and that is, it's Roger's right on the one. If you can show the benefit coming back, it's kind of something we look at a lot of times when businesses come in and we're looking at the gives and takes of possibly, you know, putting in, you know, part of their sidewalk for them or something like that. Then we need to show that that the city receives some value. The donation aspect of it is one of two. One is that when you're donating, it's got to hit those public purposes, and that is, and I'm just going to quote this one. Limits appropriation of money to municipal corporate purposes only, but provides that it is considered a corporate purpose, so our purpose, the municipal purpose, to appropriate money for any purpose that is, in the judgment of the city council, provides for the safety, health, prosperity, moral well-being, peace, order, comfort, or convenience of the inhabitants of the municipality, and is subject only to the city council first holding a public hearing on the matter for the donation. So, in reality, this is something that's got to be at a public hearing, unless it's already been approved in a budget, which, and it's not. And at that point, the only difference there is because it's considered to be part of it, because you've had public hearings on the whole budget, and you can ask questions about it. So that's the one thing that depending on how you approach this, that if it's going to be done, we probably got to do it at a public hearing on top of that, just because otherwise, there's no difference between this request and the Girl Scouts coming in and saying, we didn't sell cookies this year.
So do we have to redo this as a public hearing for the notice, or is this sufficient for what we've got?
Well, if it's not in our budget, I'm not quite sure how we get around it otherwise. And certainly what we don't want to do, I'm certain these guys don't want us to do that, and that is, if you were to approve it, and then someone somehow challenge that and go, well, there wasn't a public hearing on that, and you find out, well, it's going to get pulled, and now you're 3 months down the line of when you could have used those funds. So I think if we do, frankly, we probably
need to notice it as a public hearing.
Yes.
That
See,
we
here's
do.
the thing that I still am troubled with, is it's actually a part of the Utah Division of Juvenile Services, and the legislature just elected not to fund it, apparently. And so we have to decide if we as a local community want to continue a state program, we've got to fund it.
Correct.
And so it is a little different than a Girl Scouts or whatever else, because it's really a state entity.
Yeah. But in terms of us providing part of the
Part of
funds
the
that you
funding.
guys allocate, the difference is that it's money being donated, because we're not buying a service, we're not buying something specifically, so that's why it would have to be done that way. And I don't think any of us, if we're going to consider it, want it to be challenged because we failed to do it the right way.
And along those lines, Councilman, last year when we did do the donation, we issued the check to the state of Utah I think probably in light of the fact that it's a state of Utah subdivision or something like that, would that be what would be expected to go to the state of Utah?
Yeah, it'll be expected, and usually that's just the preference that they have and take because of, obviously legal ramifications that they have. So what would happen is they allocate it to a fund and it'll go right back to us.
So in essence, it's a voluntary state tax in a circuitous fashion.
You could say that. You read my mind, but, and I think one of the biggest things is, I have a question to you. How do you conceptualize and measure the social impact? I mean, do you have to have statistics or?
No. I mean, these guys do that. I mean, everything they spend of the public's money is for one of those purposes. So, this, I mean, you know, that's not a stretch to say that this supports the public's well-being. I mean, that wouldn't be a stretch to find that, but just because one finds that doesn't mean, you know, money's going to go out to it, because we got lots of people that can cover a number of those topics.
That's a big umbrella.
It's just interesting because it's a program of the state of Utah whose legislature unfunded it, and now the program is lobbying the legislature to refund its own program. And
Well, and the legislature has decided not to do that, and so
Yeah.
now they're going to the communities and saying, fund this,
Right.
if you want to keep the program.
And do I foresee that being like the norm? I can't tell you. I mean, one of the biggest things was the impact on all of us, the economic downfall. So that was one of the things. And again, it's one of the first programs that'll go.
I know that the governor has taken a different approach to cost cutting, and he's still trying to cut costs. And my fear is it's one of those things that the governor's office and the legislature have agreed can be cut from the state's budget. And so,
Well, especially if they know the cities are gonna pick it up and the county's gonna pick it up,
Yeah.
and why
I
not
doubt
cut
it'll
it?
go back to the state at that point.
And I think that's one of the things that, you know, that's a shared concern with all the other city councils. And all I can really say is we're taking it year by year. Hopefully that brain tank has kind of figured out how they're going to do it. I think that was one of the fears that they said, you know, do we open Pandora's box? Hopefully it's a good box we open, but I think one of the things that they did kind of stress was in that fiscal year from 14, to 14 is just kind of finding ways that we can do that where not everybody feels like they're doing their share or such and such city didn't do their share. And, you know, that's kind of one of the biggest things. It's kind of collaborative effort. And that was kind of the sticky part of the Bill 218. If you guys get a chance to review it, the language reads as this. The legislature intends collaborative funding to be ongoing, therefore, you know, funding for receiving centers and youth service programs under this part is intended to be broad-based, be provided in an appropriation by the legislature. So they obviously going to do their part. To the division include federal grant money, local government money, and private donations. So, in a nutshell, are we headed that way? I can't say again, but my feeling is it's pretty.
Yeah, from what it sounds like is they're leaning more on, or looking more for more participation from the private sector.
Or the
partnerships.
Partnerships.
And that's where I would think that's kind of where they're seeing that, is saying, let's go out to the private sector. And of course, in southern Utah, we've chosen to say, well, let's go to the communities.
Yeah.
Probably a little easier in this type of economic situation.
Well, and I think the important thing for you know, when we come to you guys is understanding that the probability of that happening is being upfront with you guys and saying, you know, is that a continuing thing? And obviously ongoing funding means someone's got to pick up the bill. And the thing is that we're looking at is what does that mean? Can we conceptualize and obviously stand before people in our community and say, for as many youth that we house in your city, are we just going to give that X amount of dollars and ask for that X amount of dollars versus, you know, where we're at? And we're not at that point right now where we can actually have somebody sit down and say, okay, you know, the city of Washington had 10% of the population through June of last year to June here. Obviously, St. George was the biggest. They're asking. We have gone to the county. They've kind of approved and said, you know, we're gonna do it. But they still have the same types of questions you guys have, and I honestly cannot give you a good answer or give you an answer to that.
One of the things that you mentioned a time or two is that you're a preventative organization,
Mm-hmm.
but yet it seems that some of the examples you showed us were more hands-on, actual in the event of, not so much preventative as I don't know what the term I'm looking
So-
for is basically when the action, I mean, when the battle's hot, you step in.
Yeah.
So what preventative type stuff do
We
you
have
guys
what
do
we
besides
call-
just house youth that are,
We have what we call an outreach program, which we go out there. We just started the Students Against Athletes, Student Athletes Against Bullying. That's took on fire. We've been in every high school, making sure that's a big problem here. It's kind of one of those things where it's that dirty little secret nobody wants to talk about. It does happen. So we've done stuff like that. We do provide resources with community partners. Like we use Southwest Mental Health a lot. So if a family comes in, I'll just walk you through a scenario. If you'd come in and said, you know, I'm really struggling with my teen. I've tried every parenting skill I know. I've gone to every resource that I know. We're the ones that are going to find you a different resource and say, these are the resources with Southwest Mental Health. While the student is housed there, they learn life skills and techniques. There is some reference to therapeutic work. We don't do the therapy there, but we'll go on and give them an outside referral. So the preventative part is making sure that they don't enter our system, meaning,
the juvenile detention system?
yeah, that they don't end up in Hurricane, basically. So we'll follow up with them and say, okay, you know, you've been learning your problem-solving techniques. Where
So
have
your
you been?
preventative is basically identifying that this is a problem
That could
situation
get
right now,
worse.
that you're preventing the next step,
Yeah.
basically. That's the preventative.
Yeah.
There's nothing preventative from getting them to you.
Oh,
You're just
there are.
preventing them from going forward.
There are. I mean, we sponsor family classes, and we take referrals from the schools or referrals from Southwest Mental Health, and we'll provide them with techniques and skills to kind of have a better functioning family.
See, my understanding was that it's more of an intervention when there's a crisis within the home, that this gives the juvenile a place to go to until things can be sorted
Right.
out and cooled off. And to that end, I might invite Chief Keith, if he would speak to the value of that to our residents. If you don't mind, can he join you there for just a second? Josh and
Thanks, Council. I appreciate the opportunity. This is obviously, as you heard last year from me, a valuable resource for us as police officers, because a lot of times we're put in the middle of a situation where we might have a child and a family member having an altercation or something where they can't work it out, and there's no alternative to put that child anywhere else. This is the location we can take the kid and give some time out, some time for the emotions and things to settle down, and also reach out with the resources they have available to teach some of those coping techniques. The other thing that they do that's very beneficial for us is in partnership with us and Child Family Services, we partner together and develop what we call the safety plan, the child safety plan, where we develop, they go in and they develop with an officer and a representative from DCFS and these folks a safety plan, so that the parents, we as police officers, and the child sign this saying, and it outlines what will happen if you don't do this. And it helps give them some guidelines.
therein is where it becomes preventative.
That's the preventative part, and it gives us an opportunity as well, rather than responding every time a person calls and says, hey, my kid won't do what we ask him to do. Put the safety plan in place, and that way it's a little more teeth for that child to know that if I violate this, I'm going there.
What happens if this program isn't available for our officers?
To be honest with you, what we would have to do is leave the child there in the home, and then we don't know what, you know, in those hostile situations where emotions are flaring and things are being done, you really are open to some potential issues. So,
And to Josh, real quick, are the other, St. George obviously is the largest municipality in the county. are they participating again? Because it seems like to make this go, to pick up the shortfall from the state funding, it would take all communities involved. Are they participating?
Yes, they are. I actually just came from Santa Clara.
So Santa Clara is participating?
Santa Clara, Ivans, we're waiting to see on her,
Yeah.
being honestly, because they don't participate in the safety plans. The logistic maybe doesn't make sense for their police officers to come come all the way out. The county has participated too, St. George City.
Is this something, Chief, that we could build into your budget year in, year out, so that it doesn't have to come back before us? I mean, if we think it's valuable, and if you think it's valuable as a resource for your officers, can we?
Yeah, I think it's something we could put in the budget. I would ask Tammy and their group to put together some guidelines as to what that would be, so that we had some numbers to work from, so that it wasn't just, let's give 5,000 or 3,000 or 10,000 this year,
Right.
but have some kind
Something
of
to
a measure that we
substantiate
could
the
say,
amount?
based
Yeah.
on the use out there, similar to what we do with other fees. that
Or
are
dispatch
combined.
even, and-
Dispatch.
Can I follow
If I-
up on that? So, let me rephrase that question, Chief, and this may be a tough question for you, but not expand your budget by 5,000. But is it crucial enough that you would divvy out some other portion of your budget to this particular situation under the current scenario of our budget?
Let me answer your question candidly. I would expect that if it's a program that we can show that the value is there, that maybe the budget would be expanded. If not, then I would hope that I would have the money in my budget to make that work. But that's why I would say there'd have to be some kind of a formula, so we would know each year, just like we do with our dispatch and school resource and things like that, that, this is a program that's very valuable. I do have some concerns myself about the organization coming back every year and asking when it's a state organization, and, maybe there needs to be some more efforts for community involvement, things like that. But I will tell you, if it's taken away, and I think you would get this from any law enforcement agency in our county, that it would be a negative impact on our community.
If I could say something here, I think before you put it into the budget, it seems to me like we'd want to let this run a few terms to see what happens up at the state and what is going to go on in the communities. And then if we had a public hearing and people knew what we're talking about, it sure be nice to have the community come in and maybe even have individual sponsors coming in willing to donate money. We have the information you're providing, and you could bring in some more detailed information about how you've helped solve some of these crisis things. And, let's have it an open and fair hearing so everybody knows what's going on and what's the proper funding for it, I think.
I agree, and I think anytime we can have transparency and open conversation about what we're trying to accomplish so that we all have a better understanding, then it's easier to say, maybe we do increase the budget by 3,000 or 2,000 or 5,000, or maybe we don't, and we need to sacrifice somewhere else, but I agree with that.
And Chief, I'm sorry for the question. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I think you know where I'm coming from with this issue. And that is, we're struggling with your department anyway in order to even get services leveled. And then do we take money from that and put into others? And that was really at the heart of what I was trying to get to.
And that would be a tough decision. And ultimately, I would have to make that. And I think there would be a lot of discussion before that was the case. So.
And like I say, I know as a council member, I can sense a value to this and need to fund it, but it's easier for me to give away somebody else's money, so I want to make certain that everybody's involved and knows what we're doing and feels good doing it.
Right. And it can come at the expense of something else that's more needed in our community as well. And so I think that's a very valid concern, and I would welcome an open meeting to where we could have some discussion on it and bring in some of the people that have benefited from it. And otherwise.
Well, it sounds like short of it being a budgeted item already, that's the avenue we've got to take, is a public hearing to consider this donation.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't, last time it came up, I don't think maybe until we got the check last year that we realized it was a state agency. As it came through, as I'm recalling the discussion, I don't think we realized that, because I think that adds an element for the council that have to consider on top of anything else, that we need to go through the process of making sure we talk about this in an open forum, the way the state legislature told us to do it. Even they're the ones taking the money away from the program. They told us, you better talk about it in an open meeting to do it.
I think based on the information that he brought tonight in reference to ongoing funding needed from elsewhere, from the legislative perspective, that it absolutely has to be something we're looking at from a broader perspective and more of a long term, if we're gonna do it at all, because each year it doesn't make any sense for them to come back and say, I need 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 or whatever it might be.
It almost seems like we need to, well, I just know some of the intergovernmental agency groups and what's the word I'm thinking of, Council Starkey, the agreements where the.
Interlocal agreements.
Interlocal agreements,
Right.
something like that, where we define on the front end and then we operate according to that.
Right, and I think you'd find all the agencies down here supportive of some kind of an agreement like that to where it was more structured, if
Well,
that's
and
where
I
it
gotta
goes.
tell you, that's, I mean, this is occurring here, I mean, to me, it sounds like it must be occurring across the state. I mean, and maybe the fact is, maybe the legislature don't know that every city council in the state of Utah is getting hit up because they've taken money away, and they're not having to go to the city to do it. I mean, you know, 'cause what's gonna happen if, you know,
That's where they
Medicare and
stay
Medicaid
there.
happens that way, they stop funding, and if they're gonna come and ask for you, each city
Well,
to do it, it seems really
they
odd.
almost encouraged it though with what was read to us as part of the bill.
I'm sure they did
Yeah, that
encourage.
might
They
be.
said,
get
we'll
money
give
from
an
somebody else."
appropriation and they'll be encouraged to seek private and public donation elsewhere.
Well,
Yeah, that might be what the.
They got the
Obama
donations
said.
Yeah,
when we
but I
paid
thi-
our, they got the donations when our cities paid their taxes.
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for, is more of the public, or private, I should
Yeah.
say, the other entities, not so much governmental entities.
And maybe the discussion is, at some point you tie the city donation to, you meet certain deadlines or quotas with getting private money. If you reach a certain amount, the city will pay a certain amount. That way it's not the city's first.
Right.
I don't think what we don't wanna have occur is that to increase every year and just keep coming back for more and more and more, because obviously we can't.
Well, and it would be a shame to have this not be able to stay open
Right.
as well. So my thought is that this needs to come back before us in a public hearing. So I don't know
You guys
if,
have to decide
if
if you
we-
wanna put on, if you do it.
if we
request
table it or deny it and ask to come back for reconsideration in a public hearing. I'm not sure what the motion should be.
I think the request that's made has to be, you know, either denied or just withdrawn, and then you guys have got to decide if you want it to come back to discuss in a public hearing, so you can decide whether or not you want to approve it or not.
So does the statute specify a public meeting or a
It's a
public
hearing.
hearing?
It's gotta be a public
It's
hearing,
gotta be
yeah.
a public hearing
Yeah,
that's noticed
I
as
didn't want to
such.
get those mixed. It's got to be a public hearing.
Okay.
That constitutes 2 weeks from now.
You have to have at least 14 days notice.
14
Under
days.
state law, the same legislature that took your money away, said we have to give 14 days notice, and then let the public come in and comment on it if they want to.
And you would want to be here, you or Tammy, to answer
Right.
any questions or anything like that as well.
Probably on the 17th, we're looking to,
It takes so much time to get it in the paper. I don't know, Denise and Kara can answer that, but typically, you gotta have a little bit of lead-in time to get that 14 days out. Next meeting, probably in July sometime.
We're
but that
looking at
might-
backing up to the
Or look-
seventeenth.
yeah.
We'll discuss that a little later. but-
Could come as early as July, which might be the only meeting we have in July.
Thank you.
Josh, thank you very much.
Thanks.
So Mayor, I think for the purposes of the agenda item, I'll just make the motion that we table this issue till our next meeting in July. And
I think that'd be appropriate, and they could.
And relist it as
What
a
they would
public
probably
hear-
do is
as a
withdraw,
public
I
hearing.
think by tabling it, they can then withdraw this thing and come back as a public
Submit it.
hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Set it for a
We need to make a
So I would
motion and a
second that
second.
motion.
All right.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Aye.
Staley, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
So, Council, then you want staff to put this
Yeah.
on the next agenda, the next earliest agenda they can get with a 14-day notice?
Sounds like with noticing, yeah.
Okay. Item 7, public hearing for consideration of adopting a resolution to open and amend the Washington City 2012-2013 fiscal year budget. Kimberly?
She just slipped out, so
Right.
if you need Brian? If we need,
Brian says I'm slipping out.
Don't worry, we had a long discussion last night on this.
yeah, we're really kind of to the point if there are any questions during the public hearing.
I was gonna say, I think that's probably what you, that I would think that you would do is set this up so the public understands what we're doing here, and then we'll turn the hearing open to them to.
I'm new to this, so,
Just say amen to that and we'll,
all right, we'll go with what Councilmember Truitt said.
Manager, I'll discuss
Do you
it.
want me to just briefly, we have a requirement, of course, always under state law to have a balanced budget. And we usually have, anytime we make changes to the budget, once the budget has been adopted, as just occurred with the 2014 budget, this upcoming year budget, we have to have public hearings and other things. And so this is the current year's budget, which our fiscal year ends on June 30th. And throughout the year, as we make adjustments and as the council approves adjustments, we have to hold a public hearing in order to approve those adjustments, and then we take a motion on that. So being the end of the year and having a requirement of having a balanced budget, we have just made what adjustments we need to within the current year's budget, which was posted. And so that's what the public hearing is, to get any input with respect to that. Is that what you were going to say, Brian?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly it.
And Manager, I just
go
follow
ahead.
up your comments with the adjustments appear to be positive in the sense that we're using less of our reserve fund and a little better projections on most revenues and even some savings on costs. And so it's,
It's a good thing.
as much as a budget can look positive, it's a good,
Yeah, thank you, Councilman, because that's probably what's most pertinent to the community, and that is that this budget adjustment actually is adjusted in a very positive way as we end the year.
Thank you, Brian. I will open this part for a public hearing. Anybody want to make a comment or suggestion or thought on our budget? If not, I'll make a motion to close our public hearing.
Well, I'll make that motion to close the
Well, I
public
won't make
hearing.
a motion, but I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second Councilman Turek's motion.
I'll vote aye. I was gonna make a comment, but
Go ahead, make the comment.
you know why they call them budgets, don't you? You set it and you don't budge.
Unless you budge the way we did, in the right direction. You budge the right
Councilman
direction.
Truman. All right, let's start over.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Sig Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 8, resolution. Consideration to approve a resolution increasing, decreasing the revenues and expenditures of Washington City 2012-2013 fiscal year budget.
Well, with what we've just covered, I would make the motion that we approve the consideration, the resolution increasing and decreasing the revenues and expenditures of Washington City in the 2012-2013 fiscal year
And if you
budget.
would like, Councilman, to add to that, just that the total budget, that amended budget of $44,123,320.
Amen to what the manager said.
Second the motion.
Motion and a second.
Councilman Turek, aye.
Sig Miller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item B, consideration to approve a resolution setting the property tax levy for Washington City fiscal year beginning July 1, 2013. Carrie Wheelwright, City Treasurer.
Good evening, gentlemen. Pleasure to be before you again this evening. I come before you with the certified property tax rate as set by the county for the tax year of 2013. As I'm sure you're all aware, the state legislature mandated several years ago that counties and municipalities have a steady stream of income coming in on their property tax, and that's how they determine the property tax rate that they have, is by taking the value of the property that we have within Washington City, figuring in what we have over a 5-year rolling average, and looking at the collection rate that we have. And in Washington City, our collection rate is just shy of 91%. And they take that figure to determine what we are going to need as far as property tax. And the property tax, certified property tax rate that they have proposed this year is .001621,
Is that less than last year?
and that is less than last year. Last year's was .001711. So it has gone down as far as what the levy rate is. That doesn't necessarily mean people's
Yeah.
property taxes are going to
We
go
would
down.
anticipate that the value of a lot of these properties is increasing a little bit, so it's
That is correct.
oftentimes
The
kind of a
total
neutral.
value, yeah, the total valuation of the properties have increased within the city. Plus, we've had additional building that has gone on in the city. And what that provides us with is a revenue of just shy of $2 million, $1.935 million.
Do you remember what our revenue was last year on property taxes?
Well, we haven't completed everything as far as that particular year, but we are right in that neighborhood of about 1.95.
You're talking for the 2012-2013 year.
That's correct.
And projected is 1.935.
And actually, the county operates on a calendar year, so that's the tax year. But from our revenue standpoint, what we look at is the fiscal year. For the tax year of 2012, I can't tell you exactly what that figure is, but it's in the $1.8 million
But with this
area.
certified tax rate, it ends up being very, very close.
Very
I imagine,
close.
year in, year out.
Well, and I think that's a great point to bring out, because the fact of the matter is, the way the certified tax, and this is where I think people need to understand, the certified tax flows up and down to keep the revenue collection stable, with the exception of new growth component. That's always the addition usually. And Washington City has typically been in the lower quartile of property taxes in the county. We've been happy to be able to maintain that. But the certified tax just keeps that to keep the revenue stable on the other end.
And Washington City hasn't asked for a tax increase in a number of years. The levy amount has increased and decreased over the years as property values have changed and as growth has occurred and so on and so forth. And as I say, this year it's gone down slightly from what it was a year ago.
All right, any questions?
I'll make the motion then that we approve the resolution setting the property tax levy for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2013 at .001621.
I'll second the motion. Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Miller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to item C, consideration to approve the resolution setting the property tax levy for
Just-
Washington City Special Service District in Coral Canyon.
Just a minute, Mayor.
All right,
I think Councilman Staley's motion was at .001621.
No, I wrote down what Carrie said,
Yeah, that's
The
.001621.
resolution reads .003000.
No,
That's
that's,
the
that's
service.
your-
Coral
that's the
Canyon,
one
that's the
you're
one we
voting
have
on.
coming up right now.
Okay,
Okay.
so I'm reading the wrong one. Okay, that's good. Then I
Yeah, that's your Coral Canyon.
apologize.
you don't need heavens. Okay, I'll move on. The Service District in the Coral Canyons for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2013.
Same situation that we have here. We've got the Coral Canyon Special Services District out there that we have always, we have had a bond, or several bonds actually, that we have used for putting the services out to the Coral Canyon area. And over the years, why we have had a tax rate of .003, we've asked the county to keep that at that .003. We have done some adjusting as far as the financing on that. We actually refinanced some of the bonds out there to lower our debt service at this point in time, because we no longer have the backup of Suncor to come in and help us offset some of the shortfall that we may have there. But we do still have some money that is in escrow that is available to us. And with the lower debt service that we have on the bonds that we have refinanced, we can make things work with the escrow that we have and with this tax rate for another couple of years.
And if I
And in
remember,
that time, we hope to have the value back up.
if I remember correctly, we've had some lengthy discussions on that as well, on how to keep their tax rates down for a number of years because of Suncor pulling out, and you were creative enough with some of this financing to be able to do that. So we appreciate your efforts. You know, they're already almost double what everybody else is paying, so we want to keep that as low as possible.
I agree.
I would mention too, with regards to the .003, under the previous bond indenture, we were required to have that as a minimum level. Didn't mean that that could be the maximum level, but that was the minimum level. With the new bond issuance, that is not required anymore. That is not a requirement under the indenture. But we think, based upon the projections, that we need to kind of maintain that at that level, again, in anticipation that that the savings on the refinancing will be completed in about 2017.
Two quick issues, Carrie. First one is the title to the resolution. It's a Special Service District in Coral Canyons. I believe we need to take that S off.
We need to erase the S.
Yeah, erase the S, and then just the 3 zeros after the 3. What's the purpose of those 3 zeros? Just to
Shows
fill out
not rounded.
the numeral?
When you receive your property tax notice, Councilman,
Has it got 5
they carry it out that far, and so just to stay consistent with it,
with the other rates?
when you look down all of the rates that you have on there from the different levies, that keeps it consistent with
Just
those 3
keeps-
zeros afterward.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay,
That's a
any
good
other
question.
comments,
I'll
questions?
make a comment that has nothing to do with this, but I will tell you that my son missed a math question one time for adding zeros
At the back.
at the back. Or was it before the decimal?
Probably before.
He probably gets his math skills from me. But anywhere where the zero was had absolutely no bearing on what the number was.
We can pass that
So
on
we
to the
debated
county.
that that was technically a correct answer.
Yeah,
So
okay.
whether it's .00300 or .003,
It's .003 to me.
ultimately it's the same amount.
That's correct.
And that if Noah wherever happens to happen to turn on channel 22 and see this, to recognize that his dad supported him.
He
in
did get an
effort
A in
he
that
made.
class.
Is he supporting him or letting everybody know that he's
Well,
having
I-
zeros?
He
Well,
still got an A.
Well, either way,
paid the class.
I think it goes without saying to recognize that Noah's bright in math and should have never been even questioned on there.
Well, and I feel stupid for asking, but I saw those 3 zeros and thought there's
I will agree with you,
those don't
but
look like they
it
belong.
would also look a little bit odd if they took the zeros off when they sent your property tax notice out to where some of them
Cut short.
extended out that far, some went only
Only
one.
3
And you
digits.
can
Point,
count that
so on
some
and so
citizen
forth.
would say, what's behind the three?
Or what's rounded, did they
A
round up
line
from
above the
something?
zero.
Well, Mayor, if there's nothing else or no other discussion, I'll make the motion that we approve the resolution setting the property tax levy for the Washington City Special Service District in Coral Canyon for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2013.
At?
At .003000.
I'll second that one.
Motion and a second.
Truman, I.
Staley, aye.
Segment I.
Eric, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, and we appreciate all that you're doing. Item D, consideration to amend the master fee schedule for utilities, community center, and fee changes imposed by the Water Conservancy District.
All these tall people.
Surcharge Denise Bullock, how are you?
I am fine. We are just here tonight to do some slight amendments in the master fee schedule. The different departments that have, I'm just overseeing the master fee schedule as far as making the changes onto the internet. And so I'm kind of the gatekeeper of it. If you have any questions on each individual department, they are here and they'll be glad to answer any questions you guys might have.
I've just got
I
one on,
might be able to answer it for you.
trying to understand on the first page where it talks about the daily admittance, college student or senior, and it says 20% off. And then the full facility looks like 100 is, I don't know if that's a new charge or something new that's going on
On the community center.
on
She's
the
coming.
community center.
What we're trying to do is just consolidate from 6 punch passes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 punch passes to 3. We wanted to have a full facility and have it be a price in between the youth and the adult, because what we're finding is parents won't buy a $100 punch pass for themselves and then turn around and buy one for the kids for $72. So more of a family punch pass with the price right in between both. And then we also wanted to consolidate and have just a single activity pass. So if they're going to do aquatics, where we used to have an aquatic punch pass, that single activity punch can be punched for swimming, or they can do the rock wall or do the gymnasiums or go to a aerobics class. And then the third punch pass is to still have the daycare punch pass. So between those three, we've had 2 different discounts for seniors and for military, and that's the 20% off. Oh, excuse me, and the college. So what we'd like to do is just offer 20% off of those 3 generic punch passes, just for
Okay,
ease
so-
for the front desk, for the consumers.
So all of those hashed out black numbers
All
are
these hashed out,
reduced 20%?
right over here on the very far right. What we're proposing is a full facility punch pass for 100, 20% off for seniors in college, like we've always had, and then the daycare punch pass to be
And so that's
added.
that's 20 uses, a punch
20
pass is what that
punches,
is.
yep, per
Okay.
person.
So
So
we're
it's not
getting-
like for a family, it's a
Getting
one-time
rid
punch.
of the adult and youth difference, they're just
20
one.
uses.
Right,
one
so you would just buy a
regardless of
full
age.
facility 20 punch pass, and anyone can use it.
Okay.
So the 20% off is just simply the punch pass itself. It's
Just that punch pass, and it's only for seniors or college students.
correct.
So for us, it's just ease in the system for the consumers when there's so many choices.
So
and-
it's $80 for a college student or a senior, $100 for everyone else for 20 uses.
Yes, for a full facility. And then we would give it 20% off for the single activity punch pass for seniors in college. What we're finding is the seniors will purchase that. We don't have very many college students coming our way to take advantage of the punch pass.
So
They
this-
typically do a monthly, if they do anything at
So
all.
the senior would be $320 instead of the $4 resident fee. Once you get your 20% off for a single punch pass.
No, you look out
Oh,
to that
you gotta
far
look
right
clear to
column.
the far right for punch passes only is what we're
Okay.
proposing, not the daily fees.
Not the other fees, okay.
And then also to add the monthly pre-K preschool class. We've advertised it, it's full, but for some reason we didn't have it as part of the 3-year-old and 4-year-old. It's basically an advanced class and it goes every day. And when I noticed with Denise, it wasn't listed on here, so that one we added.
So the ones that are listed, the 3 and 4-year-old classes you've got there are what, 4 days a week, 3 days a week?
The 3-year-olds go twice a week and the 4-year-olds go 3 times a week.
3 times, and then
This class would be
monthly
going
pre-K
4
is-
times a week, or
is
5 times a week,
5
excuse me,
times,
yeah,
okay.
Monday through Friday.
And what hours?
They go for 3 hours. This year we're excited because they were able to really condense down their labor and fill their classes. And so they've turned a nice profit. They've been really self-sustaining, which has been great. And they utilize all parts of the center, which also helps to promote and market the rest of the center. So. Any other questions?
I've got one on the Water Conservancy monthly surcharge. I don't know who
Thank you, Wendy.
wants to answer
Thank you.
that one. I don't like any of those, so. So what, is this something that the Water Conservancy District approved, that's gotta be passed along to the
Well,
citizens?
this is something that we talked about with council probably 3-4 months ago. This
About
is
the
a
pass-through.
charge, a surcharge that goes along with the regional water supply agreement. In the previous years, we've just absorbed it in our budget. Well, the problem we have is now our water department budget, our revenues keep dropping, and we are the only city that hasn't passed this on to their residents. So that's what we're proposing, is just adding this district surcharge onto our water bill and passing it through.
So what kind of entities would have 6-inch meters?
We only, and I actually brought the page from last month. So we only have 3 that have 6-inch meters, and those are, I think, just the RV resorts, Kings Row, Winter Haven, and Cherokee Springs.
So the master meter,
They're just a big master meter that serves every resident in those developments.
So they would split that $181.91 amongst their residents.
This is a monthly fee?
Yeah.
This is a monthly fee.
This is a couple
So, like,
$100,000
to give you an example,
increase in revenue.
Winter Haven, I believe, has around 220 units in there. So they would be less
So
than
most of the
$1.
residences are on the 3/4-inch meter?
Correct. Yeah, you can see those numbers there that.
So in
The
previous
majority.
budgets, we have just shown this as basically part of that payment to the regional conservancy. Has this been lumped in with water purchases?
It is. Yeah, in the budget, it shows as the surcharge. There's
But-
a line item
but
just
the
for
district
surcharge.
Bills us
This
per
is what,
connection based on the size.
this is actually what we submit once a month to the district. So our last month's, or May's payment to them was $17,000.
This is the piece of the regional water supply agreement that we had requested early on in negotiations that they have a cap on. And they didn't agree with this.
Well, and they haven't been discreet in announcing their plans that part of their purpose is to encourage water conservation through pricing. And I think it's pretty obvious they're getting the structures put in place to.
Now, I will say, in fairness to the district, of course, this surcharge, we were looking for a cap of around 6%. They couldn't exceed 6%.
6% of what?
6% of their total. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was based upon. Was it the total cost?
I think it was.
Our cost? Now, this doesn't even come close to 6%, so I mean, in fairness, but we wanted a cap because right now it's unlimited. I mean, at some point, the district could say, we're falling short in this area, so we're gonna do a 10% surcharge. And that was one of the areas that the district disagreed and would not go with our recommendation.
Or 50% if the Lake Powell project goes through, right?
Well, and that's precisely what we were a little concerned about. They did take a lot of our suggestions, this was not one of them.
Well, I think we're in got a two-edged two-edged sword. If you do Lake Powell, you're gonna have to pay for it. If you don't,
Yeah, pay for it.
you're gonna hear that there's no water, so they're gonna
Charge you for
charge
it.
you to encourage conservation, so.
Well, and as well, if council doesn't want to adopt this fee, we will have to come back with actually a rate increase on our end.
And our water
Just to be,
fee.
yeah, just to be able to cover our debt and our,
Well, at least this way we can blame it on the district, right?
well, it is their charge. It is a charge. we
Well,
have to
and also,
pass through.
again,
Would this
in
be
fairness,
listed on the utility bill as such?
That's how we'll list it, right on
it would
the
be a
utility
separate
bill.
line item.
Yes.
And the reality is, though, there are some good things that the district does in the economies of scale, bringing cooperation, coordination between multiple municipalities, and so to support that,
Yeah, it was a good thing. The regional water supply agreement, one of the issues we ran into prior to this agreement coming in is, a good example was that the cities, we were artificially increasing water rights. We would all be competing for the same water rights, so we'd offer this, and, Santa Clara would offer, and St. Ivan's, and so people would play the cities to get as much as they could out of these water rights. And so our water rights were just getting extremely expensive, and that was our only recourse for water, is to actually purchase water rights. Or, like in our case, we build a water treatment plant to treat water, and we're still paying the fee on that water as well to the district on the raw water out of Corn Creek. So what it's done now is it's brought it back to a level playing field. We're not competing against each other for water. The district does have to supply water to us now. For every impact fee that's paid, that water is guaranteed to us. It took a lot off of us from having to try to develop new sources. And we got to a point, it was very scary, because we tried drilling a well. We did everything humanly possible on the last well we drilled, the Grapevine well number 2. And we were not guaranteed, but everybody's saying you're gonna hit a minimum of 600 gallons a minute. We got 125. So, a lot of the good aquifer areas to drill, they're just not there anymore, and a lot of it's locked up in the habitat where it's very hard to drill, let alone costly to drill if you're in the habitat.
Well, and in reality, Mike, at least at the moment, I think our fear is more of the future than at the moment, we have very good water rates for our environment, very, very good water
well,
rates.
you even look at other communities that have restrictions on water uses.
Well, I'll give you a really good example. We're working on a new ordinance on our structure for our water. Instead of doing the ERUs, we're looking at doing it based on the meter size. That is probably 95% of the communities out there, that's how they bill on water. It's not on ERUs. It's very straightforward, it's very easy. And we're actually meeting with the engineers and utilities, Kimberly and Aaron, on Monday to go over this. I met with the engineers on this on Monday, and Las Vegas actually has their structure that way, and they had Las Vegas up there. For 20,000 gallons, you're paying $4.65 a thousand gallons when you hit that 20,000 gallon mark. And I believe our rate is like $1.20 maybe, I think. When you hit the 20,000, our maximum charge is $1.85 a thousand.
So if you don't charge on usage, though, if you get in a pinch, how do you help control the amount of water?
We're charging on usage, but right now, when we get into the bigger meter sizes, we base it off of a residential equivalent. What we're looking at now is, so if you've got a 3-inch meter, we will charge them for a 3-inch meter. It won't be a residential equivalent. It really simplifies and clears up a lot of the issues we've been having on our billing on the water side.
But that's something we'll discuss and look at it.
It is. We'll bring it back to council and discuss that.
So now we're looking at this as part of our. Do we have a choice, really, Mike? I mean, now that we're going to pay it this way or pay it another way.
Well, like, we already agreed to pay it. The
Yeah.
contract's signed, and we take the water.
And
It's
we've
just-
covered it for how many years without passing it through to our
See,
citizens?
we did that, I think in '06.
It's probably been at least 5 years, probably
Well,
more
it
than
was
that.
more than
And
5
more than
years. I
that.
think we did '06 is when we entered that.
All these events
water
just run
supply.
together when you have so much
Yeah.
fun with it.
It might even been prior to
I
'06.
think it was prior to '06, probably '05 or '04.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, they've put it in their very literature and their pamphlets, everything they distribute makes it clear that one of their ways to encourage conservation is fee structures.
Well, and our fee structure is set that
Yeah, so
way
we
too.
do the same
The
thing.
more water you use, the higher rate you use.
Yeah, that's
We
one of the
try to
challenges
promote
I
it.
have with them is they hit you on a property tax, they turn around and hit you on a surcharge tax, and they turn around and charge you for the water. It's like, wow.
Then the city doesn't want weeds, but if you water, you pay a premium. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it'd be nice if it was just one saying, you know what, this is the cost of your water, and whatever you use, you pay for it, and there's one fee for it all instead of a piece here and a piece there and
This
welcome
is
to
one of
government.
those that I think if we had our choice, would just soon say, no, we don't want any rate increases, but we don't have a choice. The good news, though, is there are other administrative fees in this fee schedule that are really encouraging. A lot of reduction in fees that don't have to do with water, but deposits are down, new account setup fees. It looks like our utility department's done a great job going through and really revamping the costs and reducing the costs in a lot of cases for some of the utility services.
Well, and depending on the way the council wants to go with this, if you adopt this and putting this on the bill and label it as the district charge, we will, with our rate structure that we're looking at in the water, we will now look at our structure and see if there's a way that we can lower ours in an amount that we need to lower.
Because we're pulling that out now.
Because we're pulling this charge out that we haven't been paying, or that we have been covering
paying.
before. But then again, like I say, we are.
But aren't we?
We do need to create some
dropping
more revenue
each year.
because we have been dropping every year.
Yeah, you always want to say those things very quietly because a lot of people will hold you to that now.
Yeah. But we're also gonna be looking at our sewer rate as well.
Yeah,
As soon as we get the water done, we're gonna be looking at that ordinance as well.
I think as a city, though, obviously our first priority is to make certain that we're not overtaxing and overburdening our people. So if we do pull this out and bring in an extra 200-something thousand a year, and actually we have a surplus of 50 in what we need in water, that ought to go into reduction. And it's going to be based on projections rather than building a rainy day fund, I would think. So
Reduce the usage
the
rate.
rate.
But along with that, we also have to plan for our future and projects that we have to build in our future.
Yeah.
And debt service that we have to look for and a reserve fund to cover that debt service.
Yeah, I think you put all that into the calculation, and if there is an excess, then that ought to go into rate reduction.
Right.
And I think that's what just to echo what Councilman Staley said, one of the things that I really like about this new fee schedule is some more realistic costs. I mean, prior to that, some of those reconnect fees and stuff obviously they weren't really what they were costing us.
A lot of them are cut in half or
So
more.
I think that's what they've looked at and said, really, what's the true cost for us to go out and do that? And that's what they should be charged. And so I really liked what they've done there and say, really, what is the cost for doing business in this way? And let's charge what reality is, not an inflated price. And so I appreciate those departments and
Even some of the power deposit rates have been reduced drastically.
And part of that,
40-50% on the
the
deposits.
deposits, a lot of the deposit issue is largely driven by how well our consumer is responding to payments on time. And during the time that the economy was really stressed, as a matter of fact, we pushed deposits up a little bit. Quite frankly, our bonding company wanted us to, because we didn't want to run ourselves into a problem. And so you are seeing some positive trends here, and a lot of that has to do with our consumers and their behavior with their own bills.
There's a lot of things the bonding companies would like us to do that our citizens would not find very savory. I'm sure the bonding companies would love to see a lot of,
Give a lien on everybody's home and.
Yeah.
well, if there's no more discussion on that, Mayor, I'll move that we approve the amended master fee schedule for utilities, community center, and for the water conservancy district surcharges.
Okay, do you have a motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second.
Councilman Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Cooperative agreement, item 9, consideration to approve a cooperative agreement between the Utah Department of Transportation and Washington City regarding the Southern Parkway. Mike Shaw.
Mayor, Council. This cooperative agreement is for Washington City to help contribute some money towards the Phase 3B of the Southern Parkway, which will benefit us in the installation of a storm drain line that has a huge benefit to us on savings for from us having to install a separate drainage system to the river. This would be actually taking the overflow from the Warner debris basins and piping that over to the gypsum basin. And so UDOT has asked us to participate in the project with a $300,000 contribution. We will get an $80,000 credit for the donation of the right-of-way of the existing road that they will build over top of. So with an actual cash of $220,000 going towards the project.
And Mike, I know we talked about this last night. If you could just let our viewing audience know the benefit of this plan versus what it would take if we had to run the line ourselves.
Yeah, the benefit would save us putting a pipe in all the way to the river, and a potential savings of over $2 million. With a $200,000 investment, we save $2 million in future. And then there's a lot of other benefits that's going to come along with this in the future that's going to actually really help us down the road on other drainage issues that we have in the fields.
Just specification on one thing in paragraph 3, Mike, it says UDOT will construct a bridge at station 466 plus 95. Does that mean something to you?
That,
Location.
yeah, that's the location of this. It's a bridge over the, an access, and that's actually in phase 3A.
So that's an engineering number or some form of a reference number that makes sense.
Yeah, it'd
That's
be
a reference number of where the
on the
location
Southern
of that
Parkway
bridge is.
location where we're gonna
Yeah.
tunnel
Okay.
through
And
there.
that would be at interchange 8, the proposed interchange 8.
Okay.
All of the interchanges on the Southern Parkway are approved locations, whether they be built by UDOT or built by private. There won't be any other interchanges allowed on the Parkway other than these ones that were pre-approved.
And just because this was, and Mike, you probably haven't seen this because I tried to do it on a PDF edit format to put onto this, but because this came up fairly quickly and because we want to take advantage of it, this isn't a usual 40-page UDOT document, and so I wanted to put at least a provision that UDOT often has in these types of agreements that you'll find on, if you want to take a look at it. This would be the only change I suggest for the form we have now. There's going to be a folder now named Edit. If you go down a little further on your, if you go to your documents.
Edit to UDOT.
Yeah, open that. If you go all the way to the bottom, that's the only way I could get it to work in this PDF format. Just go to the bottom. I'm just going to add that on one of the last paragraphs, those kind of conclusory paragraphs, just to make sure if we have something needs to be added, we have some drawings or some stuff that come in that makes sense to put into it, because we certainly don't want to lose the benefit of this kind of a project just based on the fact that we couldn't get UDOT to sign something that clarified it.
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve the cooperative agreement between the Utah Department of Transportation, UDOT, and Washington City regarding the Southern Parkway with the aforementioned edits, as stated by Council Starkey.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second.
Councilman Turek, aye.
Seg Miller, aye.
Staley, aye.
Truman, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 10, sale of non-significant. I've never known of anything non-significant when it comes to property, but
Sorry, that's a term of art.
okay. Non-significant municipal property, consideration to sell parcel of ground owned by Washington City in the North Bridge subdivision area.
I wanted to first address a question that Councilman Truman asked last night with regards to the appraisal on a 15% factor, I believe was the Morley and McConkey, who are the appraisers on this particular parcel, responded. Let me just read this to you, and we have verified this. The factor of 15% comes from the 4-3-2-1 rule of the commercial appraisal. And this is how it states. The rule that states that the first 25% of depth of a property represents 40% of the value, the second 25%, 30% of the value, the third 25%, 20% of the value, and the final 25%, 10% of the value. The surplus parcels to be amended are situated at the back portion of the property between about the back half and last quarter of the lots after the amendment. And that's the reason for the basis of the methodology.
Like everything else, somebody in their infinite wisdom just drew an arbitrary line and said, here's the value.
Yep. So they had some methodology, no matter how goofy it was. We did meet with Mr. Belliston. Mr. Belliston was here earlier. I don't know if we pointed him out or not, but Mr. Belliston was here. It's been great to work with. We did meet with him at 2 o'clock today to review, if you'll remember, that little connection piece. The part that was missing from the value was the piece right on the rear side of the property as you come out. Oh yeah, thank you.
Community.
So it's about 1,000 square feet, and so there'll be another additional $1,000 added to that total price. So Drew will point out just that piece right there. Yep, it's kind of blocked out.
That little square right there, yeah.
So when they put it all together, they didn't count that because it wasn't at the back end of a property, and so I appreciate Mr. Ellerman for picking that up. We met with Mr. Belliston. He agreed that it had been missed, and so you can add another $1,000 in that. So basically, the position of the question to the council this evening is, for the council to make a motion if they want to allow this to go to a surplus sale, which just means we post it again, that the council is considering this to be a surplus sale. It is not a public hearing because it is not a significant parcel, but it does have to take action in a meeting, but we need to go through these other things. So that's the purpose tonight, and then the next council meeting we'll bring it back and have the council either approve or deny the sale.
I think we move forward with it.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd make the motion that we approve the posting for sale of a non-significant parcel of ground owned by Washington City located in the area of Northbridge subdivision.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turk, aye.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Item 11, fire restrictions. Consideration to approve the fire restrictions in Washington City. Chief Hafen?
Hey, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
I like it. What, Chief
Chief
Hafen?
Hafen.
Oh, I thought you were talking about fire.
Well,
fire
I
restrictions.
guess, but Chief Hafen sounds great.
Mayor and council, thank you very much for your time. In the past couple of years, we have done a executive order that the mayor has signed for the purpose of restricting not just fireworks, but other restrictions similar that are listed in this executive order, such as mowing lawns after 10 o'clock in the morning. Not lawns, but weeds and stuff out in those areas. Cutting, welding, grinding, those sorts of things. So we do actually have an ordinance already in place that talks about fireworks, but and this extends that, and it is designed to. I was going to look at where the extension is. We were going to run it through starting on the 28th. That morning, which would really only give a day, and then run until we come before the council again to rescind it.
Here's just a question for interpretation, but, so mowing or otherwise cutting dry vegetation, if I got a dead tree in my yard and I'm out cutting it down at 10:30 in the morning, technically I could be fined $1,000, 6 months in jail for that? Is that how?
Well,
is that the way we want this to be?
If we're in the restricted areas, yes. Now, the restricted areas are north of I-15, from mile marker 10 basically to mile marker 17. And then if you run down Telegraph to 300 East, south 300 East all the way, everything to the east of that, which are the areas really that what they do is they extend out into areas where if we started a fire within the city and it expands out into those other areas, it can cost us a ton.
That's kind of where we interface with wildlands.
Yeah.
We're not worried about, like, see, I grew up on the south border of I-15, and every year we caught that on fire with bottle rockets. We're not worried about those areas?
Well, we are worried about areas, yes, but there are areas that can be controlled much better than areas like north of town. If we get a fire that goes up through the Turtle area and heads out up that way, it's so big and so vast that's when you get into extreme amounts of dollar costs to put something out. Obviously, we can't limit everything. I mean, I look at the river bottom as another area, and so what this does is it tells you that if you are setting off fireworks within 30 feet of any dry vegetation, even within those areas that are you know, that are allowed, that,
Okay, so-
that you're, that
so that
you're
number-
involved.
That
Number
fireworks
two
are.
would have limited me and my family from our freeway
Discharge.
side bottle rocket launches.
Yeah,
Not only would have, but will.
yeah.
Well,
The one thing that we did do this year that last year we had the all aerial devices were illegal.
We smartened up, we started running garden hoses up there.
And this year we took that out.
We learned this.
took
So
the-
any legal firework that can be sold can be set off within the areas that
That are
are described.
So,
Um,
if I can just maybe make one point of clarification, I'm still stuck on this mowing or otherwise cutting after 10 a.m. What about at midnight? When does it end? After 10 a.m. could be, you never get to do it 'cause it's already after 10 a.m. So, is there a certain time starting 12, midnight to
Well-
6 till 10 you can do that, or?
Yeah, you do have
6
some
to
noise
10?
restrictions in other things after dark too that prohibit that, so.
So are we looking at a time period from 7 in the morning till 10? You can do your
Typi-
cuttings? or-
Typically, yeah,
From
your noise
sunrise-
restrictions
from
lift at,
sunrise to
yeah,
If you're using a
10 a.m.
yeah.
handsaw, you could be there at midnight without a noise
Yeah.
restriction. And
Yeah, but a handsaw is not, hopefully you're not going so fast that you're gonna cause enough friction to get something going, but.
So you're kind of talking about a motor, some
I'm
sort of
talking
a-
about more like tractors with brush cutters and things like that on the back that could be going out through dry vegetation and hitting rocks and sparking and those kind of things.
So we're not
So-
talking about, you're not gonna cite somebody if they're up there with a handsaw
No.
trimming their
No.
tree, dead tree in the
chainsaw.
afternoon.
No.
Chainsaw, you might.
Are there lawful aerial fireworks that the legislature?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, they did.
Here's my concern with the Pineview Park, is it's right on the river bottom.
Yeah, and again, you've gotta have a restricted area along that side that keeps you away from the dry vegetation, so,
But we're writing here that they can use lawful
yes, they can.
fireworks.
And,
at Pineview
and we
Park.
will, in those areas, we will have,
Fire truck.
fire trucks and fire people surveying those areas and
Usually in the
maintaining that
parking lot.
that things are stayed
You're
safe.
right, though. I mean,
I mean, that's-
a couple of years ago, we actually talked about that.
Those
We just
river
didn't have a
fires.
better place at that park. And
It's
what's
hard to
important
draw
us
lines.
Is having the personnel there.
They've
Yeah.
actually, they've brush hogged a lot of that. Most of that interface there that was a problem is not there anymore.
It's real hard to draw lines, and I mean, you wanna become, anti-American, try to stop somebody from doing their fireworks, you know? It's a hard issue to deal with, it really is, because it can cause so much damage and so much cost. But yet, it's such a big deal to a lot of people,
Yeah, it
so.
is. It's huge.
And we have determined that it is that dry that it's necessary to put these
Yes,
restrictions
all of
in
the,
place.
all of the BLM, all of the state lands, everybody has already put these restrictions in place. The only places that any fires can be built now out on BLM and state properties is within those,
Rings.
the fireplace campgrounds and.
Have you seen anything from the
signs.
governor's office? Last year, of course, they had that emergency declaration from the governor just before, I believe, the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Has
I
the
haven't seen
governor's office
anything, I
issued
haven't
anything
seen
yet?
anything from the governor's office this year, but the state and all the states and the BLM have issued those. And most cities also.
The only thing I take issue with is the fact of there being heavy vegetation load, that we didn't have enough rain this spring to have much vegetation grow. We just got leftovers from the last couple of years that didn't burn.
Yeah,
Did you go, have
That's
you checked
true.
out my backyard?
there is areas of some that are heavier than others, but.
Chief, I think you've done a great job with trying to allow, like you said, what has become a
Yeah.
great tradition in our city and our country, and that's with fireworks, and still trying to keep us as safe as we can
Safe,
be
yeah.
in doing that. So I think you've done a great job there. Is there any other questions with?
No, but I'd just make the motion that we approve the fire restrictions, as listed in the Washington City Executive Order 2013-01, and is presented by Chief Hafen.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Item 12, election and consideration to approve a resolution designating and appointing election poll workers and their alternates to serve in the municipal primary election August 13th, 2013, and the municipal general election November 5th, 2013, setting the compensation for their services and providing for other related matters. Denise.
Good evening again. This is just basically a resolution that's mandated by state law that we approved, that you guys approve who our election judges are. We do not have to have election poll workers that actually live in our city. We can pull them from different areas. You'll notice on the list that some districts, we have a lot more people than others. Those are, some of them are trying to do one election, not the other. Some will be like an alternate in case something happens and someone can't make it. So even though they show that they're at these districts, we do have the ability to move them if we need to. Are there any questions on anyone's name or anything?
I don't have any questions on names. Are all of the polling managers required to drive to the county building?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to take the machines. We have to get those cards. They have to come out and taken over to
So
them.
they're
There's
the
two
ones
of them that have to go to.
responsible for getting them to the
They
county
are-
building. They don't come here and then we take them
No,
over.
they take them straight to the county.
Okay.
But when we calculate their mileage, we come back, we calculate it from the city offices over.
Is that primary sooner than in years past?
Yes, it's because of the military being able to get their ballots to them sooner. We have to mail them out so much sooner. Gives them a chance to get their ballots back. There's been several years that we have a primary and their ballots don't come back till after.
I won't be able to campaign at the elementary schools anymore. They're still gonna be out on summer break.
Yeah.
Those kids can't vote
Just
anyway.
teasing, but it's-
Teachers.
Oh, yeah, just give them a ballot.
I guess the
They
teacher.
might be able to vote
Half
in-
the cemetery
The
votes, so
parents.
you
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, right
They might
on.
be able to pull it off in a federal election.
All right, any other discussion on this?
If not, I'll move that we approve the resolution designating appointing election poll workers and their alternates to serve in the municipal primary elections August 13th, 2013, and the municipal general election of November 5th, 2013, setting the compensation for their services and providing for other related matters.
Second,
Motion and a second.
Truman, aye.
Staley guy.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Report, any reports?
Just got one brief report from the Southwest Mosquito Abatement District. Just to give you a heads up, they've already trapped a mosquito with West Nile virus this season. That was at the end of May. Last year, none were trapped until mid-July.
Do you know where they trapped it at? Segmiller Marsh, probably?
It's probably at your house.
Yeah.
But what they did say, that they don't know if it's a function of they got better traps this year. They're collecting more mosquitoes than in the past due to the modified traps. So just be aware that there is that risk, and we're working hard at the district to eliminate that or reduce it. So.
Nothing? Councilman Segmiller?
I may just report I had attended an MPO meeting today, and part of that was a presentation on several different projects throughout the county, and the one that directly affects Washington City is the road from Purgatory down through and tying in over by the Washington Dam and whatnot there. And for the first time in the history of all my dealings, I heard a county commissioner say, this is our preferred route
Really?
through there. In the past, there is no route.
Which
And-
commissioner?
Commissioner Early, who sits on the MPO, said, so there is some positive movement as to where that goes. They do have some concerns with the landfill and the shooting park to make sure that they're not interfered with, but obviously some positive movements in the direction of getting that Purgatory Road. Of course, Hurricane wants to get it, and we've wanted it, and it'd be very positive for us, so I will report that.
Good, thank you. I just wanted to bring up, I discussed with you that in 2 weeks, several of the council members will be gone, and city manager will be gone, the mayor will be gone. I'd like to propose that we move next city council meeting to the 17th. I know that interferes with, do you have a full agenda on the planning commission? Do you know?
Drew and I were talking about the possibility that you might entertain this. What I had proposed, because he thinks one item, maybe 2 items he thinks he could possibly be done in an hour. They'll start their meeting at 5. We'll start I'll notice ours as starting at 6 o'clock following planning commission. So we'll let them finish their business, and then we'll start ours, if that's
You okay with that, gentlemen?
acceptable.
Okay.
That work?
Yep.
Thank you.
That way we can do both and not kick somebody out.
Sure.
or-
Thank you very much. Thanks, Drew. We'll move on to the city manager report.
Mayor, in light of the fact that I know that the mayor and council wants to go give their best wishes to one of our new businesses in Washington City, I just wanted to report two quick things, and that is with regards to two outages, just to bring the council up to speed on that. We did have a outage on Sunday morning. That one lasted 2 or 3 hours. It was a main street. We had a boot. We have a static line at the very top of the pole, and for whatever reason, the static line came out of the boot and fell down into the 69 line, and it did what it was supposed to do. It popped the breaker. And because of the height of that line, we needed the backup of St. George with their larger bucket truck, and we have a great mutual aid agreement with all the cities, and so that's what that took care of. And then Tuesday morning, we had a short outage, and that was due to a metering transformer on the Staley substation, which is, of course, our oldest substation. This particular transformer is about 40 years old, so we're proud of it. It basically fell on the high voltage side, and but we were able to. Yep. I like to say, a lot of people say it exploded, and it certainly did, but I like to say just it failed. And but we're right now rerouting around Staley. That's not a big deal. The heat doesn't concern us with respect to that. The Staley substation actually didn't carry a significant load anyway, but this is all part of the capital facilities plan, of course, that Kelly's talked to you about too. We have a beat on another one. It's about 18 to 20 weeks out, but we actually found one that a normal one would be about 18, 20 weeks out. We found another one, and we should have that station back into service in the next week or so. Completely unrelated to each other, both those things. We hope these things don't come in threes. So I just thought there'd been some questions on the outages, so.
I was actually awakened outside on the morning ones, and there was quite the concussion. It sounded like those loud 4th of July aerial fireworks. Really good boom to them.
So I think that's all the report, Mayor.
I want to add, Chief Hafen, your firefighters were right on. They were there in 3 minutes. Somebody must have called. They were there in 3 minutes. That was amazing. So, congratulate them, will you? I think it was Reyes, his group. So.
What happens when the mayor calls in an explosion?
Yeah.
Yeah, Homeland Security was there as well.
All right. Nothing else. I'll
Make a
suggest that
motion.
we adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Truman, aye.
Staley, aye.
Segmiller, aye.
Turek, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great evening.
My wife's in the parking lot texting me saying, I'm ready to eat.
Let's go.